Hello and welcome to Fertility Talks, the Therapy Fertility podcast. I'm your host, Ranae von Meding. This week I'll be speaking to Sarah, who, after receiving a diagnosis of endometriosis, chose to preserve her fertility through egg freezing at Therapie Fertility. So you had a laparoscopy when you were 21?
Yeah.
What was that like?
They never really went down the fertility because they were just treating me for endometriosis. I didn't really want to hear it at the time. I didn't seek that information out myself, but I'm glad that I have it. So for anybody else, I would say just get a test done. Be a bit curious about your health. If you hear the sentence, it might affect your fertility, get curious. Don't just take a one-liner. I think I knew 2 girls that did IVF, but no one my age talks about AMH testing, talks about FSH or, your ovarian reserve. I would love if this was more like public knowledge for mid-20-year-old girls.
Yeah.
And guys, I think it's so important.
And that's the main thing, no regrets.
Exactly. Because I would be kicking myself if I could have done something and didn't.
But thank you so much for coming in. It's great to meet you in person after kind of chatting back and forth.
Yeah.
So let's go back a bit, because just to give a bit of context as to why you're here. Yeah. You were diagnosed with endometriosis in what year?
2016 officially.
Okay. And what age were you?
21. Okay. 21 was my very first surgery, so young enough, but I knew I had it from a very young age because I had symptoms, so it was just the official diagnosis, because that's how you get it diagnosed, is laparoscopy surgery. So yeah, 21.
And from what age were you experiencing symptoms?
I'd say 15, 16, like young from the get-go. I knew, well, like I didn't know at the time, but I just thought that was a normal period, just to be crippled in pain, fainting, missing days in school. No, not normal. So yeah. And
so that went on for 6 years before you actually got a diagnosis. And like people around you kind of saying, oh, you might have this, or did GPs tell you, your family, what was your experience? Because like that's, you're going through enough as a young teenage girl.
Oh yeah.
And then to deal with that incredible ongoing chronic pain.
Yeah. Like 16-year-old girl anyway in school. It wasn't a good time anyway, but it runs in my family. There's a few of us that do have endometriosis and other kind of fertility problems. So there was a few kind of family members being like, oh, you might want to get seen by your GP. You might want to get into the system now earlier rather than later. My own GP sent me for a referral in the Rotunda, but they wouldn't see me. 16-year-old girl, they wouldn't see me, so they just put me on the pill.
What age will they see you at?
I'm not quite sure, but for me, I got fobbed off. I got put on the pill and put on the long finger. And typical. But
I think for a lot of people with endo, that's a common thread is, sure, go on the pill, you'll be grand.
Go on the pill, it'll suppress your symptoms. And I think it's 7 years to get officially diagnosed with endometriosis. For a lot of people, like it takes a good few years to actually get diagnosed. So I was one of them. But I'm glad I did get diagnosed in the end.
So you had a laparoscopy when you were 21?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Scary. Scary. But then on the good side, I was so happy then. I was so relieved. I was like, oh my God, this isn't in my head. Like, I have a full official diagnosis. This is brilliant. I can go from here. I can get treatment. The surgery itself, they found it in 4 different places. Wow. So they removed it from those places. And then I was okay for, I'd say 2 or 3 years. They gave me the coil at the same time. And that did, it helped me. I was pain-free for a lot of that. So, I'd say the surgery was a good thing, getting an official diagnosis and getting pain-free for 3 years till I was 24.
Okay. And at what point did the thought come to you, or did someone say to you that this might affect your fertility? Yeah,
they never really went down the fertility because they were just treating me for endometriosis. And on the flip side of that, I don't think I would have wanted to go down that conversation as a 21-year-old. I'm like, I'm here to talk about my endo. I'm not here to be talking about fertility. So they would throw out statements like, endometriosis affects your fertility. And I'd be like, yeah, okay. But that was it. It was like a one sentence, wouldn't go into depth of, does it affect, miscarriage? Does it affect how I'm going to conceive?
They would just say it affects fertility. Just
say it. Done one sentence, done dusted. They tick their box.
And at what point did that start to kind of, register with you? What age were you when you kind of started thinking, okay, maybe I'll have a look at this?
Yeah. So I was 25 and I went back for my second surgery. And I still pretty much had my head in the sand. I was totally just focused on getting my endo treated, and being in a bit in denial of, it's going to affect my fertility, but I'm grand with that. I'll figure that out when I want to have kids. We won't go there.
Yeah, cross that bridge when we get to it, kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But it was my doctor, actually. It was the consultant, and she was like, do you mind if I get your AMH tested, your ovarian reserve? And I was like, yeah, sure, go on, what harm? And then a few days later she called me and she was like, it's half of what it should be. Are you thinking of having kids? And I told her I don't know, just outright, because I'm on the fence. I still don't know. And she just said, you can't wait till you're 30, let alone in your 30s. So I would prioritize having a baby in the next year. And I was 25, going 26 the next month, and I was just with my boyfriend for a year and a half.
And what was that like, being told you got to do it now? Yeah,
it was like having a gun to my head. I was like, I need to figure out if I want a child now at 25 in a new relationship that I've never lived with them. And it was COVID. We hadn't even gone away on holidays. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to figure out if I want a child now.
And did you immediately have a discussion with him?
Yeah.
About that? Okay.
Straight away. God love him. Yeah. Very supportive. And we decided no, like it
wasn't right.
No, it's not right. I'm not going to be pushed into a decision. It's not right. I don't want to be told to have a kid just to have a kid, you know. If I want kids, great, fantastic, I'll do it in my own time. But it very much felt like a gun was to my head. Do or don't. This is your time. So we had another discussion, me and the consultant, and she said, well, you can't freeze your eggs.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, there's a second option.
Why didn't you lead with that?
Yeah. So that would have been great information.
Had you ever kind of heard of egg freezing before?
No, not really.
Okay.
Not really, no. Yeah. And like, I knew it involved injections, and I knew it involved medication, and I knew, kind of what you see on TV, but not actually what was involved in it. So it was kind of scary, but I was like, that sounds way more doable, feasible
than having a human child.
Yeah. And also telling someone with endometriosis to go get pregnant is like catch-22. That's not easy either. You're like, one hand you're telling me it's going to affect my fertility, and then the other you're telling me go get pregnant.
Yeah.
So it was much
so
better.
When you kind of landed on maybe egg freezing might be a possibility, did you kind of start looking into it immediately?
It took a few days, because I was kind of reeling with my AMH results. I was going down Dr. Google rabbit hole of, what does this mean? Looking at different graphs. Where do I fall in this graph? Oh my God, I have the AMH of a 40-year-old. Am I totally like in the doghouse fertility wise? And then I was really upset as well, because I was totally blindsided. This was my first information of fertility, and I wasn't really expecting it to be as bad as it was. It took a while, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to reach out to a few people that I know that have gone through IVF, through work or through family or anything like that. Got a few personal stories, things like that. And I was like, okay, this seems, doable, freezing the eggs. It's doable.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, right, time to make an appointment and go from there.
And did you immediately come here? Did you kind of shop around?
No. One, it was the cheapest. Two, I thought, it's a new clinic. They've nothing to prove to anybody. They, there's no bad reviews, because I was getting mixed reviews from other clinics, from other people, just personal anecdotes. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Worth a shot.
Yeah, worth a shot. What do I have to lose? It's a consultation with the nurse. I might see the doctor, maybe a few tests here and there. I'm going in with my full history, my AMH blood work.
Yeah.
Let's see what the land lies. Yeah.
So you came in. You had your nurse consultation first, did you?
Yeah, with Ruth. Lovely lady.
I know.
Yeah.
And did you have any further testing done here, or did you bring in your previous testing as well?
I brought in kind of just like my own history of my endometriosis and those kind of notes, but I had the blood work for the AMH, but they did the blood work again, and they got the, is it FSH?
Yes.
FSH done, and then other kind of blood work. So they had a really good picture then, combined with my history, my scans. I got an ultrasound baseline scan as well.
Sure.
And the AMH, that they were like, okay, right, this is what we're working with.
And then did you come back to meet Dr. Kennedy?
Yes, I did. And oh my God, I was so scared going in to meet him the first time, because I am so used to being fobbed off by doctors. like properly fobbed off. And I remember leaving there going, he is such a lovely man, and that's such a bad descriptive word, but he's just a lovely man. And I remember laughing in the consultation with him as well, and I was like, I actually feel really listened to, really cared for. He didn't try to like sugarcoat anything, and he was just really direct. So yeah,
that's what I love about him, like his honesty. Like even if it's not good news, he'll still tell you straight, but you know, he'll be kind about it.
Yeah.
Rather than getting fobbed off. And I think especially women with endo or PCOS or, you know, these kind of conditions, you're so used to getting brushed aside, or your pain is kind of lessened, or you know.
Like that was another thing that struck me, was his knowledge of endometriosis, you know, because I'm so used to rehashing my whole life story, my whole history of this, and he just got it straight away, which was brilliant. Didn't fob me off, and you know, he was really honest. I had to do the egg freezing twice.
And he told you that up front? From
the get-go, he said, look, I'm not going to lie, this isn't going to be a one-stop shop. You're going to have to probably do multiple rounds of this. But, you know, it's just how your case is. It's just what we're dealing with here. And it just depends on how you respond to the medication. You might go really well. We might get loads of eggs the first time around. We might get really lucky. But we'll do it once. We'll review, and then we'll see where the land lies. Okay. So yeah, we got 8 the first time, but could only use 5, and then we got 15 the second time, but could only use 12. So I have 17 altogether. So yeah, that's a good number.
That's a good number. It's a really good number. Yeah,
but they're eggs, so I might come back and do a third one just to bump it up before turning them into embryos eventually down the line.
What was your first cycle like?
I'm not good with needles. Okay, so like, terrified.
Was that the part that you were kind of most freaked about, was 100%, the injections?
100%. But they have like YouTube videos, so instead of me watching like a makeup tutorial on YouTube now, or like a cooking video, I'm here watching how to inject
and you're
yourself.
Probably like, oh my god, how my life has changed.
Totally changed. But like, they were really helpful, so I just had them playing in the background when I was doing it. And my boyfriend was there, and you know, he was like hyping me up, and we had a certain song that we were doing every night at a certain time.
I love it.
You know, my mom was volunteering to do them. I have a friend who was a doctor who was volunteering to do them. I have 2 friends that are vet nurses that were like, if we can tackle a Rottweiler that wants to bite us, we can definitely inject you. It's going to be fine. So I was like, okay, I have people that I can use to back up if I don't manage it myself.
But once you did the first one, how was it?
Grand. Yeah. Surprisingly grand. I was hyping myself up for no reason, because they're the thought of it.
Teeny tiny needles.
Teeny tiny needles. Like a little bit sore, over in 10 seconds, done, dusted, and then you're grand until your next one the next day.
I think it's the idea of it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And it was fine, like no major side effects for the cycle, just a little bit teary, grand. Yeah. And totally worth it.
And then when you came in for your first egg collection, how did you find that experience? Were you
also terrified?
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it was good. I only remember, I'd say like 3 minutes of the procedure. Like I don't remember much of it. I just remember Jess like rubbing my shoulder up the top of the bed, being like, you're doing great, Sarah. You're doing yeah, you know.
It's funny, and no matter how much you try to remember, you just can't.
And I remember before going, I was like, I'm going to really try to remember this, because I'm definitely going to have to do it again. I want to know exactly what it is. No, nada.
Yeah.
But like, totally fine pain wise, a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. Grand. I did it a second time, so
yeah, it must not have been too bad, because you came back. In terms of, you know, having to take time off work, or kind of disruption of your day-to-day schedule, did you find it very disruptive to go through the cycles, or were you able to kind of continue your normal life essentially through them?
I worked full-time during this, and I did my master's part-time during this, so totally fine. I took some mornings off just to go for, you know, the ultrasound checkups that you're getting, monitoring your eggs. So I take the mornings off, and then I took the day of the egg collection off and the day after, just for when any news came in or anything like that. Yeah. But that was it. Totally went about my day. My first cycle was in October, and my second cycle was in December. So my best friend's birthday was in December. So I still went out for her birthday. I brought my medication with me in my bag, and that was it. We went out for a lovely meal. We went to the pub after. Yeah. Totally fine. Totally grand. So yeah, not much different. The worst thing was putting the medication in the fridge, was finding the space in the fridge. That was it.
So you have 15.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about that number?
I'm delighted with 15. I'm delighted. I'm delighted with what I have, but it's just the fact that it's eggs, not embryos, and I know it's a bit of a numbers game.
Sure.
So I might come back for a third one. Surprise, Dr. John.
I'm back.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, but I think like that's a great number, because now I feel just I've done everything I can in my power with the knowledge that I had at the time. I don't even know if I might even use them, you know, but I have them there. So it's a big relief, you know, instead of just saying, oh, I have nothing, no backup, no nothing.
And that's the thing, I think, you know, sometimes people have this misconception that egg freezing is like an insurance policy. And I don't really like that phrase, because it's not an insurance policy, because insurance, always pays out.
Always. Yeah.
Usually, unless you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's kind of it's an extra layer of protection, and hopefully you won't have to use them. Hopefully, if you do decide to have kids at some point in the future, it will be really straightforward for you, and that would be the best outcome for everybody. No one wants to have to go through fertility treatment or assistance.
Exactly.
And but it's there if you do need it.
Yeah. And I think that was part of kind of my journey as well. It's not a pleasant thing to, you know, be told you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
But doing the process was pleasant.
Yeah.
Getting my results is pleasant. Having sound peace of mind, pleasant. It's worth it to get to this point for me, that I can kind of close this chapter for a little while until I'm ready to look back at it and be like, okay, am I ready? Am I not ready? Is this something that I'm going to use? Is it not? But I have choices now, whereas before the doctor was just telling me get pregnant. You know, and that was no choice for me. That was a gun to my head, and that wasn't good at all.
The whole thing, I think, is having options. And how, like you said, you feel kind of a weight off, like relieved.
100%.
Do you think that if you hadn't have done this, you'd feel very different right now about like your future and your choices in the future?
I don't know how I'd feel now if I didn't do it, but I know future me, looking back, if something went wrong and I wasn't able to have kids, I would be kicking myself. I'd go, I had the opportunity, I had the choices, I had the knowledge, and I didn't bother. You know, I think then I would be kicking myself. Now, I'm not wanting a child, I'm not wanting to start a family, and as far as I know, my AMH will decline as I get older. So that chapter wouldn't be closed. You know, I would be getting every birthday, I'd be like, woo, I'm 27, I'm 28, you know, how's my AMH this year? So I think it's good that I, you know, have answers, and I'm happy at this stage where I'm at.
So it's almost like you've given a gift to future you. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's great.
It is. And I think you know, that's what I love about people having options now. Is being able to have all the information and make a choice. That's not to say that every person should do it. Absolutely not. And I think that's one of the things about, you know, the guys in here, is that they'll be really honest with you. Sometimes people come in and they'll kind of be sent away like, no, we don't actually think that's the right option for you. Give yourself another year or two, see where you're at, come back, get another test, see how things are. Like, it's not right for everyone. But I think if it is right for you, and it makes you kind of live a bit easier and breathe a bit easier, that's kind of priceless.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that was a huge bonus for me as well, is being told the honesty of, I really think this is for you. And even Dr. John saying, you know, you're young, you're not married, you're not long with your partner, I don't think you should do embryos, let's do eggs. You know, like a really honest conversation with my boyfriend there beside me going, actually, you know, great that you're here to support her, but like, you're not relevant right now.
Yeah, no, totally, because some people might be, I don't know, led into creating embryos, and while the success of those embryos would be much higher than freezing eggs, and actually it is better to freeze embryos, for you as a person, that wasn't the right thing to do at that point in time, because, you know, that's putting a lot of pressure on a new relationship, and that just wasn't right for you.
No, but that's, you know, I wasn't upsold. I never felt like he was trying to get me in the door to upsell and get loads of money. The way that he phrased, you know, this is going to take a few cycles for you, it was out of compassion of going, I'm sorry, this isn't what you want to hear. I don't want to see you come back here for loads of times for your cycles. I want you to get your results your first time around, but just be prepared. So it's very honest, you know, and it's lovely.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who is in the same situation as you were a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Potentially knowing they have a condition for years and starting to think about their options.
Get some tests done. Get some tests done. Like, I take my hat off to the doctor in the Rotunda that asked me did I want my AMH tested, because that was the first time ever, you know. So I was like, oh my god, wow, I got my knowledge now. I can, you know, I have choices now. I didn't really want to hear it at the time. I didn't seek that information out myself, but I'm glad that I have it. So for anybody else, I would say just get a test done. Be a bit curious about your health. If you hear the sentence, you know, it might affect your fertility, get curious. Don't just take a one-liner of it might. Ask questions. Be curious. Go a bit deeper. Get a bit more tests done. Take it into your own hands. Don't rely on the doctors. Doctors chop and change all the time. Your health is yours. You have the responsibility for you. Look after yourself. It's worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, get tested.
Final question. What do you see in your future?
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. I saved the hardest one for last.
Of course. Oh God.
Do you think, and like, you don't need to know, that's the whole point of this, you know, things change constantly through life. Do you think that you might want kids at some point?
I was always a firm no on kids until they told me I'm going to struggle. And then I was like, it's a bit different now.
And that's a really common theme among people who, when the option of something is taken away, you realize maybe I might actually want that. So do I want kids? Do I not want kids? Don't know. Still on the fence. I went through 2 egg cycles freezing. I might be leaning towards probably wanting kids, but just nowhere near ready for that. Emotionally, financially stable, none of that. So I can kind of see me, you know, house, white picket fence, married, maybe a kid or 2, maybe. It's the ideal. But at the same time, if it didn't happen, I can say, okay, I did my best, and that's okay, and I'm happy with that, and I'm not kicking myself, and I don't have any regrets. I'll get a fur baby, maybe several. And I'll be totally okay with that if it doesn't work out. And that's the main thing, no regrets.
Exactly. Because I would be kicking myself if I could have done something and didn't. You know, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Fine. But if I could have done something and didn't, that's my own fault. And I will definitely live with regret. And I don't want to do that. Yeah. So, yeah.
So what you're saying is watch this space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me about 5 years' time. And Dr. John, I'll be back in about a year.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's so important to have these conversations. I think people don't talk about it enough. I'm sure before you kind of went on this journey of learning and discovery, you didn't really know anyone who had kind of done this or talked about it openly. No, I knew I think I knew 2 girls that did IVF, but no one my age talks about AMH testing, talks about FSH, or, you know, your ovarian reserve, or I got this ultrasound and this is what this follicle looks like. No one. I would love if this was more public knowledge for mid-20-year-old girls and guys. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important. Well, we're doing our best. Yeah. Fighting the good fight. Keep going. Keep liking. Yeah. But we need more people like you to share your journeys, because otherwise it doesn't happen. Yeah. Well, that's why I said I'd come and I'd talk and I'd beat my drum in. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.